kuna khatari adhimu yatupasa tufahamu, sisi wenyeji wa Amu na kwa walokuyan. Khatari hii ni hakika.
A boat ride to the islands off the Kenyan coast take you closer to nature as the waves whisper the secrets of the sea. Secrets that have been held sacred for centuries by islands such as Lamu.
The knowledge of the impacts of coal and the benefits were not available.
A beautiful island, one of the oldest and best preserved in the Kenyan Swahili coast. A protected site under the threat of a coal-fired power plant.
Mradi hatari, ni mradi wenye maangamizi makuu.
A spirited community not yielding the sacrifices of the civil society groups in Kitui. The unbowed nature of individuals determined to stand against big money.
Money cannot be compared to human life, and that is why we are going against it.
Against big government, the false promises and rhetoric from the political class.
Look at the investment and how much is going to turn out with that investment.
We go behind the scenes to chronicle the journeys, the triumphs of the men and women in Lamu and Kitui in standing up for what they believe in.
The only thing that we wanted is to stop coal.
This is the story of the men and women who formed the deCOALonize movement. This is the deCOALonize journey.
Kenya has signed a 206 billion shilling deal with the Chinese firm as to fund the Lamu coal project.
Today's signing is just bringing in the new equity.
Kenyans are up in arms over government plans to build a Chinese-funded coal power plant on the Lamu archipelago.
Why turn away renewable energy projects that will maintain and sustain a green economy and then put up a coal power plant in one of the most pristine areas in Africa, not only in Kenya?
Now, a battle is being played out around resource-rich Lamu County. In one corner, ecologists and climate change campaigners warn that coal mining is a death sentence to many.
The Kenyan government planned to build East Africa's first coal-fired power plant, a 1,000-megawatt facility, 20 kilometers north of an agricultural 869-acre site in Kwasasi in Lamu County. The Lamu power plant would initially use imported coal and later convert to the use of locally developed coal from Mui Basin, Kitui County. According to the government, the coal power plant would create 3,000 jobs for the people.
Huu mradi tulisikia mwaka 2015. Tulisikia kwa taasisi nyingine inaitwa Lamu Power. Walikuja kwa hii ofisi yetu, wakatufanyia overview ya hii project na tukaweza kuzungumza na wao, wakaweza tufahamisha venye malengo na hunu mradi venye utakaokuwa.
The discussions that we had with the project proponents were mostly skewed towards the benefits in terms of it's going to generate employment opportunities, cheap electricity, which is up for debate, and that it's going to also spur economic growth through industrialization.
Local activists from Save Lamu, together with other civil society groups, began a journey of searching and researching for truth. The truth of a community which was at that time in the headlines of newspapers across the country. But what was the bottom line?
They came and they approached us and they asked us, right, what do we do about this and how do we approach this, and are there legal issues related to this, and how can we participate in these processes? So that was the first way that NJ was involved in providing the training, the knowledge, and to build the community's capacity to be able to speak for themselves.
In 2015, we had done what we call a coal atlas, the global coal atlas, that was giving a picture of how coal has affected, different other countries, and how people have also been able to campaign against it. We supported also various individuals to go to where coal is happening and see the effects of coal.
Na sisi twalisafiri kwenda kupata habari.
The Kenyan team would go to South Africa. A visit to Optimum abandoned coal mine, Mpumalanga area, would spark a grim reality on the coal investment in South Africa.
Tulipotembezwa kwa hizo station, before tuende kwa hizo station, hatukuona uzuri wa hiyo mahali. Ilikuwa tukiingia ni kama ambao tuingia mahali kwa uzwa vitu vya hatari, ni mahali ambako kuko very sensitive, ni mahali ambako si rahisi utaweza kuingia. Kwa hivyo tukaeka appointment mpaka tulipowezekana kuingia, na kuingia tukaveshwa vitu, yani mpaka wewe mwenyewe waona waingia mahali wenda ni kupona ama kama kuingia katika gonjwa hili la COVID-19.
Members visited the site and witnessed the effect of coal power plants which was built in South Africa, and they came up with the information whereby they educated the community who are at the grassroots level by showing them the videos on how the coal power plants are affected the community in South Africa, a place known as Mpumalanga in South Africa.
Ni mradi ambao umepitwa na wakati, ni mradi ambao una madhara mingi ya kiafya, ya kimazingira, ya kiuchumi pia.
Save Lamu Center for Human Rights and Civic Education, civil society groups, environment and social justice advocates came together into one national movement called deCOALonize. The campaign that would begin to inform the communities and policymakers on coal alternatives and fight for the rights of Kenyans.
It's not an organization. It was coined by a creative volunteer, a certain lady from Lamu, when people were looking at how now do we come together, under which umbrella. And well, people were playing around. Creative, if you are an artist or a creative, you play around with words, you play around with the rhythms, then the word decolonize came up. It's linked to the colonization of Africa. We do not want to colonize, like bring more coal into the country, but to decolonize.
If it was seen as a Save Lamu campaign, then people would think, that's a local problem, let them solve it. But we thought, let's have it a national face, and that's why under the leadership of Save Lamu, we tried to coordinate different other organizations to form deCOALonize. It was very clear from the start in our mind. The only thing that we wanted is to stop coal.
Tembea na Save Lamu, tukiwa frontline, kutokea tunafanya demonstration, 5 people, 10 people, mara tunarudi tena 5 people.
For the communities, it was for the project to be stopped. That was success to them. For us, we wanted also what the communities wanted, but I think for us, more importantly, was for the process to be followed. And in this case, the process had not been followed. Public participation was not effective, it was not adequate, it was not sufficient. And for us, success was that the environmental license got cancelled. And I think eventually that happened. Just going back to the looking at communities and their success, obviously just cancelling the license does not equal to stopping the project. And I think that's where other strategies had to come in, like targeting the financials, you know, and writing to them and really pushing. And that's where the deCOAL campaign was so effective and so helpful, because they wanted, or rather the community wanted, and through the deCOAL campaign for the financials to not invest in this project, because ultimately there is no money. It's very difficult for you to implement a project if there is no money. So I think that's where other strategies were so important to ensure that the communities got what they wanted ultimately.
Kwa vile kulikuwa na katiba mpya, tulipewa maono sana na taasisi za kuelimisha watu kwamba na sasa unapokuwa na shida, serikali imeweka zile structure za mwananchi wa kawaida, awe ni Wanjiku awe ni nani, anaweza kupeleka njia ya kwenda mahakamani na kufuata zile njia ambazo zimewekwa processes.
Government on one side pushing for the coal plant, and we have the common man on the other side pushing back against the coal plant. And here was the governor seated right in the middle of these two very powerful forces. I owe allegiance to my people, but I also owe a duty to the national government, because we are all Kenyans and it's our government. And I tried my level best. One, I wanted people to make an informed decision. We did not want to be carried away by environmentalists, neither did we want to be carried away by those in government and the investors.
The next year, in 2016, the National Environment Management Authority, NEMA, would publish a gazette notice inviting the public to review and submit comments on the Environmental Impact Assessment within just 30 days.
The Environmental Management and Coordination Act, it provides that a public hearing may be initiated by NEMA after the commenting period. And so them having it within the commenting period was a little bit strange. And so we did work with Save Lamu to request NEMA to wait for the commenting period to end for them to call for a public hearing and invite, you know, communities to give their opinions on the same.
We knew that NEMA was going to give this certificate, and this certificate was going to have flaws on it. And yes, we got, for example, expert analysis into this. People like Yuri Milvita, who worked with Greenpeace by that time, coming to give expert opinion. Now it was not about what they say like activists, right? Activists saying we are bringing in experts to analyze these documents.
We're given an EIA license for the project, and they got the license like I think barely a week after the public commenting period ended. And you know, it was strange to us because the NEMA, which is the National Environmental Management Authority, had different things they could have done before issuing the license. Because one, this is the first project we're having in the country, and therefore even we don't have expertise to say that we are comfortable with how the project was. So they should have at least had a technical advisory committee look at the project and maybe suggest other parameters of what can be done. There were a lot of comments that were submitted by members of the public which were not taken into consideration. We cannot say within a week you've read all those comments.
Advocates from Katiba Institute would immediately go to Lamu as the National Environmental Tribunal met with the residents in Kwasasi to understand the impact of the project.
Tutakuwa pia tunaonesha kwamba mradi huu ambao uko chini ya kilomita 1 kutoka kwa bahari kuu utakuwa na athari kubwa kwa viumbe ambao vinaishi kwenye bahari.
In Kwasasi, we realized that the person who developed the environmental impact assessment report did not follow the laws and the regulations on people participation, because it would have had deleterious effect on the environment of the Lamu as a county and the country at large and the universe.
Development should be informed by people's views and people's needs and the requirement to protect the environment for current and for future generations. So development does not mean killing the environment and vice versa.
Mohammed Athman was among the lead petitioners, guided by the local team. On that day, an emotional Athman would cry in court as he spoke about the effects of the coal plant.
Unapata discouragement sana na unafeel huku tayari kuambia jamii wengine labda na wao wafuata hii process, kwa sababu it is costly, it is tiresome, na ni mambo ya kutishia, kwa sababu kushtaki serikali sio jambo rahisi. Unaweza kupotezwa, unaweza kupokonywa haki zako zingine, kwa sababu hayo ni mambo si yametukumba kwa kila njia. Tulivamiwa maofisi zetu, tulichafuliwa majina zetu, tukawa hatupendekezi pia kwa jamii kwa sababu we were divided.
The experiences from Lamu would resonate well with another community hundreds of kilometers away in Kitui, trying to run from a similar overhanging cloud.
In Block D, if it is extracted here, 100 kilometers goes beyond a place known as Matu. That means that zone of Kitui County is not there. Let it be extracted in Block A. Kitui town and the rest of that area is no longer there.
Hatunjafanyiwa civic education. Koo ni nini kwanza? Tunjue koo ni nini? Mimi nimejua koo ni nini kupitia kwa NGOs ya mashirika. Caritas, Human Rights ndio wanatusomesha, tuende tukasomeshe watu nyumbani koo ni nini. Lakini serikali no.
When you check the kind of coal deposits that we have, they cannot do underground mining. They can only do open cast. And open cast will mean when rains are heavy, those deposits will go along the rivers.
Another plan was in the offering. Chinese firm Fenchi would be awarded a coal mining contract on the backdrop of promises of employment and compensation by the developers.
Geologists from Kitui County, they prepared to take community members from Moi, but representatives of the community by the name of Housing by Liaison Committee. Then they took them to China to see where Fancy is and also to see the work, where coal was done and the projects. When they were taken to China, they didn't see Fancy. They didn't even experience any company by the name Fancy. What they were shown is they were taken to the cities and they were told that those were the areas where coal were being mined, and then they were developed into cities.
Sometimes the investors could come in the name of like they are doing prospecting. They would target specific individuals. They are given money, then they allow whoever the investors are to do whatever they want to do within the communities. And still that has created tension within the communities, but they mobilize themselves.
Lack of water, lack of food, starvation. And when we discover a mineral there, which is a national resource, we leave the people with those sufferings only for a few people to benefit. So that was our main issue with the Kitui Mui Basin coal mining, because it was not clear as to what percentage was to go to the local people, the local content.
The promises made would never be met. Over time, the community has been embroiled in never-ending compensation demands from the government and skewed land adjudication processes, even as the 3.4 trillion shilling Mui Coal Basin project sits among them like an unwanted visitor.
Are not sure and they don't know where they are going to be taken. They are against that. Number 3, the culture will be destroyed because every community has its own culture. All right? Then, number 4, there is what people are saying, those who are interested that we will be compensated. Where is that compensation going to come from? From this government? From the government? Will it compensate people adequately? But before we reach there, before we reach to the stage of compensation, nobody in the community is interested from leaving his or her land.
Back on the island, fear reigned supreme. The fear of losing the heritage of the island, the fear of the unknown that was brought about by opposing the plant, the fear of what tomorrow would bring, the fear of the loss that would be caused by the pollution from the coal plant, the loss of the mangroves, the fish, and a way of life. Something had to be done to protect their home.
Using different tools like social media in order to express themselves and be able to speak directly both to counterparts, other communities that are facing similar issues, or being able to speak with government officials and interested parties directly. We're also working with them to develop their advocacy skills and being able to approach companies, for example, private institutions like banks, which will be investing, which are potential investors in these large infrastructure projects, to be able to speak with them directly and advocate for their needs to these key players.
The financials. So this is a project that's going to cost about 2 billion United States dollars. That are almost 200 billion Kenya shillings. And our government cannot finance it. The project proponent cannot finance it. They have to look externally to other multilateral development banks and international banks to get the financing.
Isaac Abubakar reflects on the painful journey that he went through.
Sijui serikali wanasikia raha wakati mama zetu wanaingiwa na uoga kwa watoto wao kwa sababu ya utetezi wao, wanasikia raha, ama serikali inasikia raha wakati Kenya iko na wananchi ambao kwamba ni danda heads, watu ambao they don't know their rights, hawawezi kufight right zao.
In 2018, Isaac and Walid would sit here and plan for a major rally in the island to oppose the coal plant.
No coal, not to that! No coal, not to that!
On the front line, hundreds of Lamu residents in a demonstration that would attract attention of the media and the authorities in dramatic fashion. Some of them would be arrested and taken to jail. They would later be released.
Tuliwa notify serikali, polisi kwa tutafanya, walipokea barua, lakini bahati mbaya baadaye wakasema, wakaja kukawa na order sasa kutoka juu, wakasema hawa vijana lazima wakamatwe.
Ningependa pia serikali pia iweze kufahamu kama utetezi uko ndani yangu, uko ndani ya blood veins zangu, uko ndani ya damu, then wajue tu ya kwamba wakati mambo yamejitokeza watanishika tu sana, watanipiga tu sana, watanifunga tu sana.
This was followed by the first anti-coal demonstration in Nairobi. The deCOALonize campaign would protest in the city, carrying anti-coal signs in support of Kitui and Lamu residents.
Kuja Ramadhani Nairobi, Ramadhani tumefunga na tukaja kufanya maandamano ya kupinga coal. Hatukujali tuko kwenye fasting wala nini. Hatukujali tuko ugenini wala vipi. Tulijali sisi tuoneshe hamasa yetu kwa serikali kwa hiki kitu kwetu Lamu County hatukitaki.
The mobilization that was there, the organizing that was there, the movement that was there was so strong that it was just the driving force behind all this.
The protesters on Nairobi streets and the fights within courtrooms were, however, leaving individuals like Abubakar Mohammed Twalib, the chairman of AMU's beach management unit, with little hope. Abubakar's biggest fear was that he would lose the beauty entrusted to him by his forefathers, that once the coal plant was built, he would have no inheritance to hand over to those who would come after him.
Zitakuwa zikitoa vitu ambavyo vinaleta madhara katika jamii. Umeona? Sasa ile elimu tukopata tukaona sisi ni afadhali kufa lakini kitu kupinga.
Mradi una khatari, mengi yake mathuri, na kama una mazuri ni machache mno haya.
The movement in Lamu was growing. Poetry was used to campaign against the political declarations and inform the public.
Utambulisho wetu tuhifadhi, na bila ya kuhifadhi hatutaweza kubakia. Nilikuwa nikiwapa mfano nikiwaambia, ukitukua pipa la maziwa, pipa, a drum of milk, ukitia kwenye birika ya maji, maziwa yatapotea yote, hayataonekana tena kama ni maziwa ikiwa birika maji ni mengi. Lakini ukitukua kilo ya samli, ghee, a kilo of ghee, ukitia kwenye maji itabakia tu ile samli, haiwezi kupotea kwenye maji. Kwa hivyo sisi tujaribu kuwa samli.
The women were not only in workshop conferences,
tukaona kuna athari nyingi,
but also in the streets advocating for a clean environment.
Mahali kama kuna darsa, mahali kuna tausia tukienda kwa kusoma, mi huomba 5 to 10 minutes nataka kuongea na wao wa mama. So nikawa naeleza kuhusu what I have seen. Nawaambia huu mradi uko na hivi na hivi na hivi, na ni vitu tumeviona, na mtatuambia ni siku gani ambao mataka tutakuja kuiproject tuwaoneshe ile, pia na clip tutawaonesha ile ambayo tumevuta South Africa tumeiona.
From the importance of involving the women in the campaign, since most of the women are left behind, especially here in Lamu. They're considered as illiterate and marginalized, so we find the importance of educating them. So I can say now most of women are empowered here in Lamu.
The culture of Lamu, women were not allowed to come out in public and air their views and raise their voices above men. But then we took the initiative, brought women together. It was just a forum whereby it was only women. So people come there, address their issues which directly or indirectly affect them as a community. And through those platforms, we were able to achieve so many things. Like right now, we have so many women who can stand out in public and address their issues without any fear.
After years of campaigning, the lawyers were eagerly waiting on the judgment.
The judgment itself is not ready for delivery today. There are a few issues still we're tackling on the judgment.
It has been long since we submitted or filed our submissions, and therefore we thought that the judgment would be ready to settle this matter once and for all.
We were reading malice in this kind of court cancellations, and we made statements on this.
Kenyan judges at the National Environmental Tribunal say the officials had failed to conduct a thorough assessment and to consult the people of Lamu, hereby revoking their license.
In furtherance of our powers, under Section 129(3)(b) and C, we order the second respondent, should it still wish to pursue the construction and operation of the project, to undertake a fresh EIA study following the terms of reference already formulated in January 2016.
He finally made the announcement. I was numb. I was lost. I was lost in a state where I did not know whether I wanted to cry, whether I wanted to laugh. I was lost. I was seeing the people of Lamu. A few managed to attend. I was seeing them really, really joyful, and I was seeing them really, really laughing, hugging each other. And I said, I thanked God.
From grassroots lobbying to environmental activists, an emotional win for the people of Lamu would be felt along the scenic island.
Wajua raha ya jambo ukifanya lifaulu, na hasa kwa jamii ilituonesha raha, manake tuliwashinda paka wale ni viongozi wetu.
Ushindi mkubwa kama huu ulitupa hima na ulitupa picha kubwa duniani kwamba watu wa kawaida kimataifa, sio kitaifa peke yake, lazima watambulike kwenye maamuzi yote ya maendeleo. wapewe nafasi yao nao wasikike.
It reaffirmed the passion I have for the work that I do, but also for what we have chosen, because for any typical lawyer, obviously if you want to make money, it's not in this field. If you want to make money, go to a commercial field, you'll get a lot of money. But for me, seeing people get justice, it means a lot.
Victory for one part of the country meant hope for another community in the Mui Coal Basin. Public participation, pushing for new laws, would be the drive of this community. This is the only way the community here can communicate on the issue. Focus groups that represent issues in the landscape.
Strong public participation is what has been reinforced in the Moi Coal case. In fact, the Moi Coal case is one of the, now we call it a classicers in terms of legal speak on public participation in environmental matters. That was reinforced again on public participation on the coal case. In fact, the coal case, the judgment in the coal case, the court spent about 80% of the judgment on public participation. And the same for Moi Coal. A huge part of that judgment was only on what public participation should look like.
Kitui, for example, even without much of our intervention, they have been able to mobilize and even present parliamentary petitions. So our intention there is to continue that work, so empowering communities. So since these licenses were issued, a number of laws have changed. We now have a new Energy Act, we now have a new Mining Act. So it's to make sure that communities understand what these acts mean for them, the rights that it places on them and obligations it places on different institutions.
We don't want the extraction of coal. Money cannot be compared to human life. And that is why we are going against it. After all over the world, it's like they have stopped extraction of coal. Why is it that we are doing it here in Kenya when even those countries which are extracting coal have decided to turn the skies blue?
Constant messaging and community engagement have kept the community engaged to continue with the deCOALonize campaign.
With these groups, as we were doing the awareness creation, we as well empowered them, strengthen their capacity to continue the awareness creation, which was expanding the awareness creation within the communities. They could organize themselves, mobilize, and elect some leaders within the groups themselves, then pass the information on coal issues within the community.
Justice does not enter a community without invitation of the communities. We do not work without the guidance of the communities. I think we're not just trying to amplify their voices, but we're really trying to give them the skills, the abilities to speak for themselves.
We have seen also other campaigns coming up. We have seen the Kitui people being emboldened by the idea that the coal power plant in Lamu is on its deathbed and is not going to happen. So for us that's one, the coal power plant, in my own view, is not going to happen. Secondly, is the strength that you give to the communities to continue believing that if they stand together, they can fight for their own environmental justice.
A campaign that Walid from Lamu understands deeply.
Wenzangu katika sehemu nyingine kama Kitui wasiseme kwa mradi ambao utakuwekezwa ni wa serikali, waseme mradi ni wa wananchi na wananchi ndio serikali. Sasa sisi kutukua hiyo huja kwa sisi wananchi tuweza pinga mradi kama wenye mradi na tukaweza shinda. Mahakama ni mahakama maadilifu.
Rika likuja ikatuweka mahali pamoja. Ikiwa tukitoa kauli ni yes, tukitoa kauli ni no. Hiyo ndio kitu ambacho kinatufanya sisi tuweze kupata ushindi mkubwa sana.
Wewe umesimama kupigania haki, inaingia tu kwa roho yako wewe, ni uendelee tu kupigania. Ni kama dini is a spirit in you, and we believe mimi nikienda hii spirit itaingia kwa mwingine na ataendelea kutetea wale jamii na haki zao.
Lakini hapa sisi tutaendelea.
The determination, teamwork and spirit of communities and organizations at deCOALonize are proof that with collaboration, No mountain is too high.
It's gone international. In Turkey, for example, I think there is a movement that was inspired by the deCOALonize Kenya, and they also want to call themselves deCOALonize Europe, right? So this is a story that has grown and has been powered by the people themselves.
Now, the wheels of deCOALonize campaign keep turning to a cleaner environment every day.
Namuomba Rahamani alonena niombani, atupe yake auni na taufiki pamoja.